Antarctica is a dormant continent, hiding secrets beneath 3 kilometers of ice that are better left unknown. This world beckons with new discoveries for those who dare to look deeper, but few wonder, what does Antarctica really hide? Most expeditions here search for traces of antiquity, but some, to their horror, find evidence of the real. Officially, there was no expedition called Tartarus. It is not in the public records, but in the classified archives. Only 34 seconds of audio material from the Tartarus expedition have survived. One damaged file that an automatic buoy relay transmitted into the void for 6 months before it was accidentally intercepted at the Alpha Dome station. It is a recording from an icy grave 3 kilometers deep, and this is what it sounds like. At first, there was only static and the sound of a person breathing heavily in an oxygen mask. Then came the voice of Dr. Marcus Thorne, interrupted by a desperate cry. "It's alive! Samuel, if you can hear me, it was always alive!" Against the backdrop of his scream, there was a mechanical grinding and a dull, oppressive hum. The voice of engineer Oleg Voronov interrupts the broadcast, shouting, "The cable! It's breaking the cable! Marcus, run! Get out of there!" The last words in the recording are spoken by Marcus. These words are spoken in a quiet, hoarse whisper, with a note of existential horror that breaks through the thick layer of interference. It's watching us. Then there was a deafening sound of the connection breaking, followed by silence. This was the last transmission, counting down 96 hours until the official disappearance of the Tartarus expedition. To find out what led to their demise in this icy grave, we must go back 6 months to the beginning of their tragic story. Dr. Marcus Thorne never sought fame, although he perhaps deserved it more than anyone else at the Dome Alpha Antarctic station. He was a geophysicist, a dreamer, a genius sent into the silence of the coldest continent. His element was the quiet struggle with the glacier, the daily routine study of 3 kilometers of ice in search of hidden lakes and ancient cores. The work itself was monotonous, predictable, and safe. Until May 22nd. On that day, a standard run of the Ice Bridge ground-penetrating radar displayed a result on Marcus's monitor that he considered impossible. At a depth of 3 kilometers, in a sector that had been declared empty and lifeless from a geological point of view for decades, the instruments displayed a perfect geometric shape. It was a square, almost perfectly shaped, the size of a small town. Such precise geometry cannot be created by ice. Nature is incapable of forming right angles. Marcus Thorne immediately reported his discovery to the sector chief, Samuel Gray. Gray, known for his pragmatism and lack of inclination to romanticize discoveries, simply dismissed the anomaly, attributing it to complex equipment interference or rare crystalline aberration. However, Marcus was already absorbed by this finding. After conducting a reanalysis, he discovered something that had escaped Gray's attention. In the center of the square, the temperature was consistently 15 degrees higher than the surrounding eternal ice. That same night, breaking established rules and risking his own future, Marcus Thorne used a reserved satellite channel to direct all available resources to a deep scan of the sector. He was confident that he was on the verge of making the most significant scientific discovery in human history, unaware that his actions would attract the attention not only of the scientific community, but also of those with very different goals. The information that Marcus may have deliberately leaked past Samuel Gray caused the expected resonance. The anomaly was too significant to be ignored. Within a few weeks, the Tartar expedition was formed in strict secrecy to study the object directly. The team was small, but comprised of the best specialists. Marcus Thorne was put in charge, which filled him with both excitement and trepidation. He was accompanied by Oleg Voronov, the station's best drilling engineer and survival specialist, and Dr. Eva Rostova, a biologist and xenophilologist, who was included in the expedition at the last minute. in case what was found at depth was not a geological formation, but life. 3 weeks later, they reached their destination. It was not a typical smooth desert. The Tartar sector turned out to be a region with active ice fissures. It was Oleg who, using a portable radar, discovered what they were looking for. A giant ice cavern that descended vertically, like a crevice leading straight to the center of the planet. The descent began at a depth of 200 meters, where sunlight no longer penetrated and the oppressive blue of ancient ice reigned. The lights of their submarine revealed an unusual phenomenon in the darkness. It was Image 47, a photograph that would later become a secret document. Frozen into the thickness of the ice, into the wall of the ice cave, was a giant, dark silhouette, vaguely resembling a human form or a huge face staring at them from the ice block. Eva Rostova, being a person of science, immediately assumed that it was just pareidolia, an optical effect caused by the play of light, shadows, and cracks in the ice. However, Marcus, preoccupied with his main goal, the warm anomaly awaiting him at a depth of 3 kilometers, ordered them not to waste time thinking about it. They continued their descent for 12 hours until the ice around them turned into a completely black, light-absorbing space. And then, Olex's sensors recorded something incredible. The crevasse ended, bringing their bathyscaphe into a boundless, empty space. Under the icy roof of Antarctica, at a depth of 3 kilometers, a huge, completely dark cave awaited them. They stepped onto solid, rocky ground that no human being had ever been prepared for. The cave they entered was astonishing in its gigantic size. The beams of their most powerful spotlights could not penetrate the darkness, sinking into absolute primeval darkness. The sounds of their voices found no echo, as if this abyss were boundless. The air was stagnant, thick, and incredibly old, devoid of any movement. But the most amazing thing awaited them ahead. Before them, occupying all the visible space, stood the structure. No building they had ever seen could compare to it. It was the very square from Marcus's scans, a monolithic black structure whose walls melted into the darkness. The material from which it was built was unlike anything known, smooth as obsidian, yet absorbing the light of the lanterns and reflecting not a single ray. It was architecture that defied all laws, geometry that evoked nightmares, towering in eternal night beneath 3 kilometers of ice. Marcus Thorne, Oleg Voronov, and Eva Rostova silently contemplated the scale of their discovery. These were the very new discoveries that Marcus Thorne had dreamed of for so long, spending hours at the monitors on the Alpha Dome. However, as they would soon discover, the price of these discoveries was enormous. In this deathly silence, far from sunlight and any sign of life, humanity was about to receive the answer to the most important, hushed-up question. What secrets does Antarctica hold? Oleg Voronov, always a practical man, was the first to break the silence. He turned on a portable scanner and tried to determine the composition of the material. The device immediately gave an error. The material was unfamiliar to it, but it was dense and, remarkably, warm. Oleg moved slowly along the perfectly smooth wall, and suddenly his flashlight illuminated something in the darkness that made even his heart, a man accustomed to polar storms, stop. It was a passageway. The opening was a perfect circle, as if it had never been cut into the wall, but had always been an integral part of it. From this inky void, a barely perceptible alien warmth had a palpable effect on them. Oleg Voronov categorically forbade Marcus from going inside immediately, which Marcus could not help but agree to, despite his expectations. "We are not an assault squad, Marcus. We are scientists," he said sternly. "First, the base camp, a complete diagnosis of the atmosphere and the perimeter." 50 meters from the black wall of the structure, they deployed a mobile research module and started up the generators and lighting equipment. The powerful white light of the spotlights illuminated the monolithic wall, but instead of dispelling the darkness, it only exacerbated its density and impenetrability. The work began, and the next 48 hours turned into a slow, almost scientific descent into a nightmare. Oleg was the first to notice something was wrong. His job was to ensure safety, and to do so, he took air samples at the entrance to the structure. The analysis revealed elevated levels of xenon and argon, but otherwise the air was breathable, except for the complete absence of bacteria. The air coming from the facility was completely sterile. Oleg decided to test the strength of the material. Choosing a standard diamond-tipped drill bit, he knew that it would be painstaking work. The moment the drill bit touched the black surface, there was a deafening screech. In a matter of seconds, the tip glowed white-hot and melted, leaving no trace on the monolith. A laser rangefinder aimed at the wall was unable to register a reflection, issuing a distance error message. Oleg examined the entire visible perimeter but found no joints, seams, or fasteners. It was a single monolith. His final test was the most exciting. After installing a highly sensitive seismograph, he analyzed the data. The device showed that the entire structure vibrated at an extremely low, barely perceptible frequency, but with perfect, unchanging regularity. Oleg told Marcus, "This is not a structure, it's a machine, and it's currently operational." At that time, Eva Rostova was exploring the surrounding area. As a biologist, she was looking for signs of life, but found only a complete, unnatural absence of it. The rock of the cave was completely sterile, no lichens, no microorganisms. However, at the foot of the structure, she found something strange. It was an oily black substance that seemed to ooze from microscopic pores in the base of the monolith. The substance was cold to the touch, but when Eva applied a heat sensor to it, the device showed an extremely high temperature. It turned out that it did not radiate heat, but absorbed it. It seemed to feed on heat. Eva looked in horror at their generator, which was 50 meters away from her. The black film on the stones slowly, almost imperceptibly, moved toward it, violating all known laws of biology. While his colleagues were busy with physics and biology, Marcus Thorne was confronted with metaphysics. Absorbed by form rather than matter, he tried to draw up a plan of the structure, but he couldn't get it right. Walking along a wall that he thought was straight, his GPS tracker showed that he was moving in a curved trajectory. Angles that appeared straight to him were displayed as 120 degrees on the instruments. The geometry of this place drove him crazy. Marcus understood why the radar on the surface showed a square. It was not a square, but only its projection, cast by something incredibly complex. Possibly a four-dimensional object that projected its shadow into their three-dimensional reality. This realization was the culmination of his tragic genius. He was standing in front of something that violated not only engineering principles, but the very nature of space. By the end of the second day, a tense conversation took place. Oleg was gloomy. "Marcus, we're retreating. This is not an object for research. I don't know what it is, but it's not for us. We're taking the samples and leaving." Eva supported him, telling him about the heat-eating substance. But Marcus Thorne had already crossed the boundaries of rationality. He pointed to the round entrance, from which sterile heat was still emanating. "You don't understand," his voice sounded excited. It's calling us." "This isn't a protective entrance. It's a language. A dead language that it uses to communicate with us. We are the first in millions of years to understand it. We can't leave." "I'm not leaving," he said, without waiting for their agreement. Then, breaking all protocols, he grabbed his backpack and stepped into the dark opening. Oleg and Eva, bound by orders and unwilling to leave their commander, looked at each other with resignation and followed him. The decision to enter was Marcus's, but now he was driven by the horror of inaction. The desire to uncover the mystery completely overwhelmed his fear and even his basic caution. Eva and Olex, bound by protocol and Marcus's authority, followed him into the dark opening. There were no light sources inside, but the darkness itself had its own special character. It was dense and oppressive, and the dim light of their headlamps behaved unusually. It did not scatter, but seemed to stick to surfaces, illuminating only a few meters ahead and plunging everything else into impenetrable darkness. This corridor, if you could call it that, violated all the laws of human perception, which further reinforced Marcus's guess. The corners seemed both sharp and rounded at the same time, and the floor seemed to change direction imperceptibly, sometimes going up, sometimes down, causing Marcus to feel nauseous and disoriented. Eva, with her keen perception as a biologist, was the first to sense that something was wrong. She stopped and touched the wall with her gloved hand. "It's breathing," she whispered. In the silence of the camp outside, they might not have noticed it, but in a closed room, it was undeniable. The walls were not standing still. The entire structure pulsed rhythmically, almost imperceptibly, like a huge, sleeping, living organism. Olex immediately checked his instruments, and his face turned pale. His compass and gyroscope weren't just malfunctioning, they seemed to have gone haywire, spinning wildly, as if contradictory magnetic fields were tearing them apart. They had lost their orientation, unable to determine which way was up, which way was down, and how far they were from the entrance. But Marcus Thorne was thrilled. He had found what he had been looking for his whole life. Ahead of him was a hall whose walls were decorated with intricate bas-reliefs. It was not text, but a map. On the wall hung a star map depicting constellations that do not exist in reality, or at least cannot be observed from Earth. In the center of the hall, Marcus discovered what he took to be an altar or control panel, a dark pedestal decorated with the same strange symbols. At that moment, Marcus, the tragic genius, made a fatal mistake. He noticed a connector on the pedestal that vaguely resembled a power source. Overcome with pure scientific excitement and wanting to activate this place, he ordered Oleg to connect their portable generator, which they had brought with them, to it. Oleg objected, insisting that it was madness, that they knew nothing about what they were doing, but Marcus was unshakable. The cables were connected. Marcus Thorne flipped the switch, and nothing happened. The structure remained unresponsive. The hall was still filled with the same dead silence. Disappointed by the failure, Marcus slammed his fist on the pedestal. At that very moment, Eva Rostova let out a quiet cry. She pointed her flashlight at the wall, where, according to their calculations, the entrance should have been, but it was gone. After Eva's cry, there was a silence that was more frightening than any noise. The opening through which they had passed had disappeared. Without closing or sliding shut, it seemed to have dissolved into the smooth, monolithic black wall, as if it had never been there. They found themselves walled in. Panic began to grip them, turning the scientific expedition into a group of 3 doomed prisoners. Olex desperately rushed to the wall, hitting it with tools, but the metal only rang hollowly, leaving no trace on the smooth surface. At that moment, Marcus Thorne realized that his failed experiment had nevertheless borne fruit. The low, infrasonic hum that they could barely hear began to grow louder. It did not come from the pedestal. The sound seemed to come from the structure itself, from the walls, from the ceiling, from under their feet. The structure was coming to life. Eva noticed that the pulsation of the walls had intensified, becoming clear and powerful, like the beating of a huge heart. And then the pedestal came to life. The symbols on it flashed with a cold, unearthly light, piercing the darkness and illuminating the hall. The bas-reliefs on the walls also came to life. The star map changed, and Marcus realized that it was not a map, but a diagram depicting a prison. And here was the most frightening thing. The entire giant cave outside the structure shook from a powerful jolt. It was not an earthquake. It was a sound that marked the beginning. In a desperate attempt to understand what he had done, Marcus Thorne stared at the glowing pedestal. It became clear to him the structure was not a city, it was not a temple, it was a castle. a complex mechanism built by someone or something incredibly ancient. It was created to hold something that slept deep within the Antarctic rock. And they didn't just give it energy, they connected their generator and sent it a signal meaning all clear, informing it that it was safe outside. They turned the key. Let's go back to that very same panicked audio recording. The rumbling grew into a roar. The structure began to change its geometry, as if sealing itself off to protect itself from what it had awakened. Marcus realized image 47, the silhouette in the ice, was not a statue. It was a guardian, one of many, and now it was coming to life too. "It's alive! Samuel, if you can hear me, it was always alive!" Marcus shouted into the radio, knowing that his message would most likely not reach its destination. Oleg Voronov tried to reach the rescue rope they had left outside, but saw a black wall closing in front of him, cutting off their path. "The rope! It's tearing the rope! Marcus, run!" But there was nowhere to escape. Marcus, Eva, and Oleg found themselves in the central hall, the light from their flashlights extinguished, replaced by the cold glow of symbols. And then the symbols went out. They were in complete darkness, surrounded by a hum and the realization that they had awakened something. It's watching us," Marcus whispered, and the connection was lost. At the Alpha Dome station, Samuel Gray watched the monitor, where the 3 green life signs of the Tartarus expedition had sequentially changed color from green to red and then to gray. "Signal loss," flashed across the screen. He waited another 72 hours, hoping for a miracle, but no miracle happened. The rescue operation organized by Gray was unsuccessful. The second group that reached the Tartar sector found nothing. The crevice through which Marcus's team had descended suddenly closed, as if it had never been there. The ice in this place had turned into a single monolith. Officially, the Tartar expedition was declared lost due to a sudden and catastrophic icequake triggered by unpredictable geological activity. All of Marcus Thorne's materials, including information about the square and image 47, were confiscated by Samuel Gray and transferred to the most classified archives under the heading Top Secret. In his personal confidential reports, which Gray compiled before his resignation as station chief, he constantly noted one curious detail. The anomaly that arose in Sector Tartarus did not disappear after the death of the research team. On the contrary, it began to steadily, albeit slowly, intensify. To this day, in the darkest hours of the Antarctic winter, communications operators at all polar stations on the continent sometimes receive a strange, rhythmic signal coming from under a 3-kilometer layer of ice. It resembles the beating of a huge heart awakened from a centuries-long sleep.